Well, hello everyone. This is Al Fadi, and I want to welcome you to a very, very special episode and a live stream of Let Us Reason. I say this with conviction because we have a very special guest with us today, and I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, will be blessed by the story that this guest will share, and also the activities and the ministries that this particular guest is involved in. As always, I want to thank all of you for joining us. Some of you are always ahead of me and always waiting for the show to start. I want to thank also our moderators. And I want to remind the moderators today, I'm going to need your help more than ever before. We want to make sure we focus things on the show and on the topics our guests will be covering. And we don't need the distractions that from time to time we end up unfortunately dealing with. With that in mind, those of you who are joining us right now, please keep your questions focused on what you hear during this interaction and this interview. In other words, keep it just to the topics that we will be addressing. I'm sure you have a lot of questions for our guest, but let us just make sure we take full advantage of the time that we have. With that in mind, let me, with great honor, introduce our guest, Sister Aynaz Cyrus. And I want to introduce her this way. She's a human rights activist and focusing on women and girls under Sharia. And also she is the national director for the American Truth Project. She herself is a former child bride born and raised in Iran. And with that in mind, Sister Aynaz, I really don't know how to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here this Friday and be able to share your amazing story and journey with many who I am certain will be benefiting from it. So thank you so much for doing so. And I'll turn the mic over to you.
I appreciate that introduction, and it is my pleasure. I do, as we were discussing before the program, I do apologize for such a delay until we could manage this program, but it's definitely my honor to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Wonderful. So, Sister Aynaz, obviously, you did mention already that you are from Iran. In fact, anyone can probably Google your name and they'll come across your story from time to time, talking about your upbringing. But take us all the way back to your early years in Iran. And in fact, I can probably resonate with those years myself before the Iranian Revolution. So, how was life for you as an Iranian citizen, but also as a female?
Well, the thing is, unfortunately and sadly, I was born after the Islamic Revolution took place in my motherland. I can tell you from the stories I've heard from my grandmother or my mother or family members. Before the revolution, this is before 1979, Iran was known as mini America in Middle East. It was completely, even pictures that you see today, it was westernized, it was modern, and it was basically mini America. However, some of us unlucky people like myself who were born after the revolution, especially when the revolution took place and everything was set and complete. What I mean by that, the country was 100% Sharia by the time I was born, which was 1983. On top of being born in an Islamic country, I was also born in a very Islamic family. My father was a sheikh, which is kind of a really high level of an imam. As an Islamic leader, sheikh is a person who can come up with rulings and judgments and all that good stuff. And then my mother was a Quran teacher. So yeah, that's where I was born. The first few years of my life, I don't remember much, and what I do remember was just life until I was about 7 years old. From there, the training starts, and I'm sure your audience are very, very well versed in that topic of Sharia and Islam, watching your program. But just in case if somebody isn't, under Sharia, as a girl, when you turn 9, you are announced a full adult woman. So the training starts about age 7. You have 2 years to prepare yourself to change the mentality, to change the looks, start wearing the hijab, start being a responsible full adult woman. Mine wasn't any different. Fast forward to age 9, I was announced by government a full adult woman. I kid you not, they actually handed me a certification with my name on it saying that I'm a full adult woman. Congratulations.
Wow.
I don't know where the congratulation fits in, but I guess they think it's a good thing. I have never to this day tried to describe how I felt. I still can't. I let your audience use their imagination of what a 9-year-old girl would feel like being a full adult woman. Now, description: you are responsible for your behavior. You will be punished for your crimes that are under Sharia considered crimes. You will obey Muhammad. You will follow the Quran. You will be a full adult, good Muslim woman. And if your male guardian said so, you might become somebody's wife. That is what I was told, and everybody else in the room with me. And to this day, every other girl who turns 9 in every Islamic country, especially my motherland, Iran, same thing repeats itself. That being said, starting age 9 until I turned 14, I turned into a full criminal. Now, later on in America, I learned that I was a very normal teenager. But under Sharia, everything I did as a normal teenager turned into crime, such as singing in public, accidentally my hair showing from my hijab, had nail polish on. I went to a party when boys and girls were all in the same room, and on and on and on. With that, I managed to get myself arrested, put in detention center, put in prison, lashed, and at home, of course, troubles with father, who's a religious leader. Before I turned 14, that was just way too much shame and a spotlight on my father. So he decided it's time to give me away and make me somebody else's problem. So that's when I was officially a child bride, when he sold me, handed me over to a man. Yes, he got paid for it, $50 American dollars, 2 20s and 10 on the table, and about a month personal usage of his opium.
Was that
From
like a
there,
dowry, dear sister Inaz? Is that a dowry or literally selling you?
no, it was literally selling me.
Wow.
My dowry was different, which I never got the dowry, which I'm not complaining, but that was a different setup. They agreed on. My dowry was a Quran, um, a mirror, 2 candle holders, 10 gold coins, the Islamic gold coins. That was my dowry. But because I ran, not the name of the country, but me personally, I ran, and committed adultery under Sharia, they weren't obligated to pay the dowry. So, but the money that my father received and the opium that he received was literally the uh, price that he agreed is what I'm worth to him. And then I was handed over and I became his wife.
Wow. And how old was he?
Um, I don't know exactly. He was somewhere about his 30s, early to
Mm.
mid 30s.
And it appears that that was a normal thing to do in those days, from hearing you. And what about your friends? They all went through the same thing?
Well, to be honest, I was raised in a bigger city, so the number of child brides were a lot less. Not all my friends. I know of 4 classmates who went through the same thing. 2 of them a lot younger. One of them actually was married a few weeks after we were announced full adult woman. One of them was about a year later. One of them was after me. So it was pretty much average of 10 to 15 years. And it's not just back then. Even today, if you check the Office of Registry of Islamic Republic of Iran, they release yearly record of marriages and divorces. And you'll see that the 10 to 15 is normally a huge number of marriages that they consider legal, and it goes into the registry system that this is the number of marriages this year. There's a 10 to 15 years, which is a pretty high. Don't get me wrong, even one is too much. But for Iran, which is supposedly a moderate Islamic country and a Shia country and blah, 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 it's a very big number of 10 to 15-year-old child brides.
So how did you feel about this? And what was the mode in your home and maybe even at school? Were there any females that were against what was going on with you, for instance? Or were they already adapting to this change and accepting of it?
To be honest, 95% of women or female I know and I knew were against what's happening, but they don't have any say in it.
Right.
A lot of time, a mother will watch her daughter go through this because she has absolutely no say. Let's mention that within the Constitution of Islamic Republic of Iran, coming from Sharia, everything that happens to you from the moment you're born until you're dead as a female, it all depends on your male guardian, never your female guardian. Your mother, your grandmother, your aunt, they have no business in deciding. And if they try to step in and defend you or oppose your male guardian, they might themselves get in trouble from going to prison or being stoned to death or being killed by the male guardian in name of honor killing. So I'll be honest with you, majority of women are against it, but at the same time, majority of women are too afraid to step in and say something.
Right. I mean, of course, I am fully familiar with the male guardian system. I grew up in Saudi, which is mandatory. I mean, just recently, the idea is that it was lifted. I mean, you can lift up the male guardian, but you cannot change the culture. It's a cultural thing anyway. So what was your reaction? Now you're being married off, so how did you take that step? Did you accept it, feel, okay, this is my life, I'll deal with it? Or did that prompted you now to start thinking about, no way, I am going to figure out something to get out of this?
No, I never accepted it. I wasn't, well, I guess just knowing before I was handed over as somebody's wife, being a full criminal, going to prison, being lashed and all that, will tell you that I wasn't about to obey to this thing that wasn't making sense to me. Now, on top of that, I had a grandmother, my mother's mother, who grew up and lived life before the revolution. So she was very well aware that there's a different lifestyle that could happen. So she also influenced me very much. I was more of a fighter. I figured if I don't obey this man, he will get tired of me and hand me over, because that happens a lot. If you're not an obeying child bride, they just return you, ask for their money back. It's like a product. It is a product. You are a product. I was a product. Anyhow. So I tried to go against what I was told to do. I knew it comes with beating. I had no problem with that. But then very quickly, I came to realize he's not a type to return me. He's the type who's going to kill me. He was that type of person. He wasn't about to hand me over to my father. He preferably would kill me one day by just beating me to death.
Wow.
Oh, and I did try to use the legal system. I did go to a court and ask a judge to get me a divorce because this man will beat me to death one day. And what I heard in return was, well, if you obey him, he won't have to beat you. So go home and make him happy. That's what the judge told me.
Absolutely. Quran chapter 4:34. I mean, it's an exact thing. So I know, in your case, you're born under the Iranian Revolution, but did any of your, older, let's say, friends or mother or aunts or anybody tell you that this practice was also taking place under the Shah, or was it a secretive thing at that time?
No, actually, my own grandmother, my mother's mother, she was a former child bride herself. She was sold or married off when she was 10. I think that was one of the main reasons she fought for me very hard. And she's the reason I'm sitting here today, because she could see what I was going through was exactly what she did. However, under the Shah or before the revolution, it was not a legal practice. a lot of families, a lot of Muslim families who could afford it would buy child brides from less fortunate families, but the marriage would never be considered a legal marriage under the Shah until the child bride would turn 16. Then they go to court and get a full, she's matured enough to be a wife. Then the marriage would become a legal marriage. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's again, I asked this question because it shows that it's Islam that controls these kind of behaviors. Even if a government is open-minded, if a government is a little bit more on the liberal side, sometimes they look the other way because they don't want to also oppose the mainstream religion that represents them or represents their people. And that was the case, of course. I remember the days of the Shah, and I remember my father was really upset when he was removed from office. And I remember him telling me about, Tehran and Iran and in general, how beautiful it was. I looked at some pictures, of course. I remember him also going to other places in exile and then dying later from cancer. But when the Ayatollah took over, initially I thought, oh, here we go, because I was religious. I was very devout. Islam is taking over. But then later they began to tell me, no, this is a different form of Islam. And so it kind of like you begin to, get into the political side of things. I mean, everybody wants their form of Islam to be the best. But, when you compare notes, what you're sharing is almost like what I grew up also in. So there is no difference whatsoever. So what happened next then? So you began to be rebellious, and unfortunately that caused some headache and havoc and all kind of problems for you.
Before I answer your question, let me just hint at something of what you were saying about the Shah time. I think it's worth mentioning when Shah of Iran, the last Shah of Iran, when he took power, his hands were very tied towards disciplining or attacking Muslims or Islamic leaders because of what the grandfather did, which was banning Sharia and hijab in Iran. And he was attacked by France and UK and all these European countries for being a bigoted and being, committing discrimination. So when he had to hand over the power, the new Shah was very careful. On that note, you're very correct. He was very generous when it came to Islamic laws and the mosques and the imams. So yes, that's actually what ended up causing his downfall, unfortunately. Now, to answer your question, what happened was my grandmother, as I said, at some point she basically came to realize that she tried to have a talk with me. I've just played out for a while. He's going to get tired. He's going to get another wife. He's going to leave you alone, all that stuff. When I said no, she came to realize there are only two options. I'm going to stay and die, or she's going to try to get me out, and I either make it or I die. So she managed to hire smugglers to smuggle me out of the country from Iran to Turkey. And pretty much I went to Turkey, went to United Nations, sought asylum, went through proper channels, and finally in 2002, when I was 18 years old, I came to America.
Wow. I'm so glad, by the way, you mentioned something about the Shah's hand being tied, because I hope everybody listened to what you said. His hand were tied. He tried to be nice. And then what happened?
They overthrew them.
History happened. Does this sound familiar to everybody? Because we still have the same mistake being re-implemented. You got to be nice. Not everybody's like that. Ignore what few have done. The same thing, I'm afraid, your sister, is going to happen. But nobody's listening, by the way. That's the problem, is the people in authority, they think you and I are lunatic when we say things like this. Be it as it may. So you came to the US. Welcome. What happened next?
Thank you. Well, of course, I took a couple of years to adapt to the new home, to work through some issues. Trust me, when you go from Iran and Islamic family and upbringing and child rights situation, you make it to America, there's a lot of issue that start coming out. I dealt with all of that, learned the language as best as I could, built a little bit of job here and there, and I started doing what is known as human rights activism. But I started basically to try and help women and children back home at the beginning who were in the same situation as I was. We started the organization to start doing what my grandmother did for me, for them, which was finding them, getting them out of the country, getting them to United Nations, saving them to any other. And back then, this is about 2005. So Europe wasn't already Islamized and America wasn't ran by half Muslim Brotherhood organizations. So it was worth trying to save people from the Islamic country into real Western countries where you could be free. And then by 2011, I decided to come out publicly and tell my own story, try to wake people up, because that's when I could see that Americans are being, let's just say, sheltered, and they have no idea what's coming. So I came out publicly, started doing my public speaking engagement, doing videos. And honestly, 2015, I heard a speech from Hussein Obama where he said, "Let me be clear, Islam is part of America." And I think my PTSD got a hold of me, where I just did a video and I told everyone, I promise you, Islam cannot be part of anything. It is started by being part of something, and then it consumes the whole thing. It becomes by itself just Islam.
Exactly.
And from there, well, there we are.
Yeah. And ISIS, if I remember, the same gentleman says ISIS was just a juvie. Yeah. So that tells you about the mentality that we are faced with. So tell us more then about your passion for liberty and freedom for women and girls. I mean, first of all, when you came in 2007, between then and 2015, how was your story received? Did everybody think, man, this is just once in a lifetime thing? Or did they look at it as, this is the norm over there and we have to do something about it?
To be honest, well, I came to America in 2002, but I started speaking publicly in 2011. At the beginning, it was actually received by many, let's say, famous people out there as, yay, come on my show and tell your story. And then very quickly after, it turned into, well, come back to my show. But here's the thing, let's be honest. What happened to you will happen to you by radical Muslims. So I want you to come on my show and tell people how radical Islam can be dangerous. I was like, wait a minute. What? What radical Islam?
Exactly.
If this is kind of like saying Sharia law. Sharia by itself is Islamic law. When you say Sharia law, you're saying Islamic law, which is repetitive. When you say radical Islam, you're saying Islam, which is repetitive. There is no radical Islam. There is Islam, which by nature is radical to understanding of average human, because we don't walk around and kill our daughters because they have American boyfriend. That is radical, but that is norm in Islam. On that note, I started getting pushed away, and I started getting labeled as biased, radical myself, apparently, anti-Muslim, even though I have never ever spoken about Muslims. I have no problem with Muslims. I have problem with Islam, and that I think that's a huge difference.
Amen.
I have no problem with the contractor who's going to fix my house. If I have a problem with the toolbox and tools he's going to use, then I'll tell him. That's how I look at Muslims and Islam. Islam is the toolbox. Now, if a Muslim decides to use the tools within that toolbox, then I have to keep my distance, because part of that toolbox is a bomb vest to blow yourself up and get 72 versions. So I'd rather keep my distance just in case if that one individual decide to blow themselves up, I won't be blown into pieces. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I tell people the same thing. And you know, I'm asking this question because I mentioned 2007 because that's me in 2007. My apology, you mentioned 2002. But in 2007, I began to really to speak out against Islam publicly. And I began to receive resistance from churches sometimes, from other believers, from Americans in general. They thought I was just exaggerating things. They thought I was just complicating matters. that there is nothing. I mean, here's what they do. They usually use a friend or a neighbor. Say, oh, my friend is a nice guy. Well, I get it. I know a lot of nice Muslims. My family is still Muslim. I'm not going to say they're bad people, but what is driving their mentality is so bad ideology that is asking them, at least in my case, to hate me, to reject me for accepting Christ. What kind of an ideology is this? Where is freedom in this ideology? And then when September 11 happened, I thought to myself, well, it is so sad that it had to come down to this for them to finally get it. Guess what? Nobody got it. In fact, a study that was done in the UK, and Jay Smith shared it with me, there was a spike by 40% of British people accepting Islam after September 11, actually. So it is absolutely unbelievable.
Well, let me tell you, it is actually very believable for me, because at least I look at it as the Shia point of view. Now, you are aware the Shia sect was started by leadership of Ali, and Sunni sect started by leadership of Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr was a leader. He was the type who grabbed the sword and went to war. Ali was a businessman. He was very diplomatic. And that's why when you look at Iran, being a Shia country, they all know how to smile in your face, and as soon as you turn around, they stab you in the back. That's how the Shia sect works. But looking at it as a Shia aspect of things, when September 11 happened, I was actually one of those people that said, this will help Islamization. Let me tell you why. The entire plan of September 11 wasn't about exposing Islam as what it is. September 11 was the entire beginning of moderate versus radical Muslims. When it happened, the first thing that started coming out of everybody's mouth, this had nothing to do with Islam. These were a bunch of radicalized people. Kerr came out saying Islam is a religion of peace. We never would do this. The entire, let's confuse the American mind and the westernized mind into there is a difference between this side of Islam and that side of Islam. All started with September 11.
Are you saying fake news started in September 11?
Pretty much. Pretty much. That's what I'm saying. Yes. But it was planned for today. September 11 was planned to make sure that 2018 will have people like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib elected or selected, because Rashida Tlaib wasn't elected. She ran by herself and she was selected. But if September 11 didn't happen, they couldn't have the whole radical versus moderate, poor Muslims, Islamophobia, Muslim community is going to receive backlash. All of that stories started building from there to where the nice, sheltered, living in a bubble Western mind started saying, oh, poor people. Yeah, my neighbor is a Muslim. They're so, they even grab a beer with me. Yeah, we need to separate these people. If you're not Al-Qaeda, you can be my friend. However, you can be Ilhan Omar, be elected, go into Congress, and the first thing you're going to try to do is insert some sort of blasphemy law. Oops, wait, even the moderate one who wears makeup and wrong hijab is still trying to get blasphemy laws in. So nobody can disrespect their Muhammad or their Allah.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better. Thank you for bringing that up too. It's just unbelievable to me when you are talking about supposedly the greatest nation on the face of the earth. At least that's the mantra, and that we have technology and we have Google and we have Siri. I tell people Siri is so smart, she can help you if you really need help. She can definitely do the research for you. And yet there is everything you want to know about Islam and the teaching of Islam and the Quran and jihad and wife beating, and it's available on the net for free. You don't even have to buy a book for it. And still people are in denial. What do you attribute this to, Sister Aynaz? Why? I mean, we're talking about open-minded society that can go and see things for themselves.
That's exactly why, the open-minded. There is human nature is about being kind and minding your own business. That's human nature. On the other hand, human nature is to get along, to fit in, and to be loved. You come to America, Americans naturally are born into freedom, liberty. They can, I mean, come on, nowadays you have 72 genders to pick from. That's as much freedom as you can have, right? Then you come to them and you said, listen, there is this book that is the holy book of a certain so-called religion. And if you would read only and only chapter 4, chapter 5, and chapter 9, you would wake up and you would make sure to ban Sharia in your country. They go read those chapters. They cannot comprehend it. To them, oh, come on, this was written 1400 years ago. Nobody's following it. Nobody's going to care. And then you tell them, oh, okay, open chapter 3. Within chapter 3, it says, if you try to touch any of these verses, you shall be killed. So 1400 years ago or 14 million years ago, they can't reform this book because if they try, well, then they shall be killed. The complication within the simplicity of this cult is beyond comprehension unless you grew up with it. Americans haven't. There is no way. I have given up on making Americans or people in the West to comprehend what this Quran book stands for. What I have learned to do is instead of getting them to understand the Quran, is to get them to understand the opposition of Islam towards our constitution. That seems to work better. For example, when I tell them that in Islam or in Sharia, there is no First Amendment, and here are my evidence. You do not have the freedom of religion. If you become an ex-Muslim like me, you shall be killed. If you're a Christian, you shall be killed. Listen, if you're not a Muslim, you shall be killed. Bottom line.
Right.
That's freedom of religion. You do not have a freedom of speech because if at any point in your life you mock or say something wrong or disrespectful to Muhammad or Allah, well, again, you shall be killed. That gets them to think. Because other than that, it is so ridiculously inhuman that you cannot expect a human to understand it or grasp it.
Exactly. Exactly. Again, if you're joining us here, we have an amazing guest, Sister Aynaz Cyrus, and I love the name Cyrus. By the way, it's biblical. Obviously, it's found in the Bible in Isaiah chapter 45. An amazing, basically prophecy about that. And I mentioned, of course, as a title, "Out of the Lion's Den" intentionally because Daniel comes from there too. So you left the lion's den. Was there any retaliation against you? Did they try to come after you? Did the government attempt to even request that you are brought back to them?
Yes, sir. The very first retaliation was a stoning placed on my head for committing adultery, which is part of adultery under Sharia, is just running away from your husband. That was the first retaliation. When I came out publicly, started speaking out, the government or regime of Islamic Republic of Iran charged me with 3 crimes: propaganda against the regime, propaganda against the supreme leader, and muharaba, which is waging war against Allah. I do apologize. I have this little kitty here who's trying to join the show, and I can't get rid of.
You definitely can join it. No problem here.
So those were my 3 charges. First, it were charges, but then they ended up basically just, you know how it is under Sharia, you're guilty until proven not guilty. So I ended up basically being found guilty of all 3 charges. As of today, I'm still expected to be captured, taken back, and face my judgment, which is basically shall be killed for all 3 crimes. No, I'm sorry. Propaganda against the supreme leader is life in prison. The other 2, I shall be killed. And then starting 2016, when I started going into churches and different places giving public speeches, I started collecting bounties or fatwas within the United States of America from imams inside America for basically just being Islamophobe, disrespecting Muhammad, coming out publicly being an ex-Muslim, all that stuff. So yes, inside America, outside of America, a lot of people want me dead.
Well, I mean, it's so hard really to believe that from inside America also. I mean, I understand when it comes from outside, but I'm glad you're sharing these things because I want people to get basically an awakening here, because it seems to me that the trajectory of where we're headed is not really going in the right direction. With that in mind, so what happened to you here now in terms of career-wise, ministry-wise, support for others like you? Is this something that you felt that you have some support to launch? Do you have success in helping others, for instance, like you?
As far as okay, it is a very rewarding mission. I'll say that much. To be able to say that since 2005 to today, Live Up to Freedom, my organization has successfully rescued 21 people from Islam. That's rewarding. But it is a struggle. First of all, as you know, when so many people want you dead, you're pretty much limited as far as how much freedom you have. You move constantly and you try to look over your shoulder and make sure not to tell anybody where your house is. As far as career, of course, I lost my career completely. By the time, I want to say 2015 is when it finally just, all my clients walked away. I got fired from most of my jobs. But then I was thankfully able to get, by working within the industry or organizations who are doing counter jihad movement and stuff like that. But I know many ex-Muslims, fellow Iranians or not, who, when I reach out to them and tell them, hey, if you would join me, we would be louder, we would be stronger, they actually do tell me why. So I can lose my life, so I can lose my job, my home, my friends, my family, and just be alone with few people who will cheer me on, and that's it. When they come to kill me, it's over. So I guess the sad news is us ex-Muslims don't have support in America from the government, from law enforcement, from people. We don't. We get way more pushback than we would get support. I personally, it was always easier for me to do it. Number one, as I said, it's one thing to be an ex-Muslim, because thankfully at some point you have come to realize that this brainwashing cult has destroyed your life, so you walk out of it and you become a better person. But then it's different when you are an ex-Muslim because they destroyed your dignity in childhood. Sometimes I feel like it's way more personal for me. I cannot go to bed knowing another little Aynaz Cyrus is being sold as of right now, and I didn't do anything about it. And also, I didn't have family when I came here anyways. So I wasn't worried about being, losing family members. I already lost them the moment I left my motherland. I didn't have many friends to lose. I was okay with losing my job. I didn't have family or husband or children. So it is easier for me. I'm sorry for giving you such a long answer, but I always take it.
Not at all. Take your time. Here, there is no time limit. Take your time.
I appreciate that. It's just, I sometimes feel like there is the counter jihad movement, there are the scholars, and then there are the ex-Muslims. I have actually lately tried to emphasize on how important our role is, because when you basically leave for both life, me and you, we've been there, now we're here. Nobody can debate what we can debate. Nobody can argue that, oh, you've never been a Muslim, you don't understand. Well, we've been a Muslim. You've never been this. So we play a very key role in hopefully winning this battle to where we can keep our freedom and liberty and country the way it should be, which is cleared of Islam and Sharia. But then a lot of people, fellow Americans, don't understand the importance, because as you said, they either look at us. I can't tell you how many people have told me, hey, my heart goes out to you for what you experienced, but just because you had a crazy father And I cut him off right there. I'm like, whoa, whoa, no, 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 no. My father definitely had mental issue. I won't deny that. But when I asked him, when I begged him and I cried and I fought, I tried to use my fist to fight him, literally physically. Why would you do this to me? He opened his pocket Quran, flipped to chapter 4, and showed me verse 3. Said, look, Allah tells me that if they're paying fair amount for you, I have the right to sell you.
Yes. At least he's honest.
I had a couple of bad experiences with my crazy father. No. My father had a toolbox to back up everything wrong he did with me. And that book still exists. Unfortunately, everywhere now.
Exactly.
In every language.
Exactly. Exactly. A question, feel free to say no, I can answer, but was there a retaliation against your grandmother or even your family after you left, just to spike the fact that you disobeyed and managed to escape?
Well, my grandmother was investigated. By the way, rest in peace. She has passed away. That's why I publicly now acknowledge her bravery to try and save me. But she was investigated or interviewed, but there was absolutely nothing they could actually, get out of her or stick to her. So she didn't face any consequences. Thankfully, she died of natural causes, just being old. The rest of the family, no, they pretty much got ahead of the game. They disowned me before anybody could think they agree with what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. If I may also ask another question, faith journey, you mentioned ex-Muslim, and I take it that you left Islam. And again, I tell people you're free to share or not to share. I'm not here to try to, quiz you or judge you. But if you feel like comfortable sharing about your faith journey when you came here, would you like to share something about that?
Of course. I became an ex-Muslim by word. I can tell you, I never, I was born into Islam. You know how it works. The moment I was born, they whispered Allah Akbar in my ear, stamped my forehead, and it was done. But by heart and by admission, I never accepted Islam because early on, when I was being trained to be an adult woman, the moment they told me I need to practice to do my prayers properly and I need to say my prayers in Arabic, even as a child, I was a little bit smart, I guess. It was a question of, wait a minute, so this guy created me, but I have to be bilingual for him? That doesn't sound like a creator. He's
Interesting.
either super lazy or you're forcing me to learn a language that I don't need to. Right there, it just didn't click. How can you create me but expect me to speak the only language you speak? Am I smarter than my creator? And then from there, of course, it kept getting more red flags and red flags and red flags. So by heart, I never accepted Islam. So somewhat just saying I'm an ex-Muslim is ridiculous. But since they want me dead for it, I'll take the label. For a while, I went through a complete, I don't know where I want to go with my faith. Then when my father passed away, I became an atheist. I gave up on existence of a good or a bad God when I was told my father died peacefully in his sleep. I was done right there. I'm like, no, no, no. He doesn't get to do the things he did to me. Just die peacefully in his sleep. For a couple of years, I was a atheist. And then when I started doing my activities, the rescue cases, I started leaning back toward the faith, Zoroastrianism, which is the original faith of Persia, Iran. And finally, in 2017, as I was giving a speech in a stone church in Chicago, I was saved right on the stage as I was giving my speech.
Praise the Lord.
Yes, and even though it's worth mentioning, I have had many churches turn me away, and many fellow Americans saying, I am not a real Christian, but I do consider myself a Christian, and I know for a fact I have been saved.
Praise the Lord. Only God judges the heart. I mean, it's funny how people give themselves the right to judge. And you mentioned Zoroastrianism, and I don't know, you probably know this, that it did contribute to a lot of the teachings in the Quran, especially describing heaven, describing Judgment Day, the good deeds, the bad deeds, and all that kind of stuff. So it does show, I mean, that in of itself should show you that Islam is just a fake religion based on copy and paste from all sources. And, again, we're so thankful that the Lord, of course, brought you over here and brought me and brought others like me, my wife and others, to give us the freedom to choose for ourselves. With that in mind, I want us to spend the last maybe 10 minutes or so talking about that. What's it like, to live this freedom that we have, regardless of how people act and behave in here, but at least having that sense of freedom? As someone, like you, who can talk about both sides because you've been at both sides of the aisle, please explain to those who are complaining lately that they don't have freedom in here. What's it like to have that freedom? Yeah.
Well, I go back to where I say, in life, what we are born into versus what we earn by hard work might be the same thing. It just have a different value. Someone like me, I had to earn my freedom. And more than that, I had to learn my freedom. As I said, it took me a couple of years after coming to America to even understand what this freedom means. When I was told that I can just go be whatever I want to be, it wouldn't click in my head. I'm like, so who's going to tell me what to be? Nobody. You got to tell yourself. But I have half of a brain. How am I supposed to make a decision? Side note, yes, Islam says as a woman, I'm a half of a person because I have half of a brain. That's why I need a male guardian. It sticks with you. It takes you years to learn that you're a full human. When you have to learn the understanding of freedom and then you have to earn that freedom, you become me. You wake up every morning, get out of your bed, find the closest American flag in your house, you hug it, and you're like, yes, I'm still free. I may not do anything special that day, but I am free to be me. I am free to do what I want to do, and I'm free to sit here and talk to you, at least for now. Depends on how much shadow banning is happening, but I can still talk to you without worrying that they're going to barge into my house, grab me by my hair, drag me on the street, put me in Ebbing present, and hang me tomorrow morning. That's what I wake up to every morning. And having the freedom to wake up happy, having the freedom to go to bed and look forward to waking up tomorrow morning, is something that I wish my fellow Americans would understand. There are people who go to bed, they pray not to wake up tomorrow because they just cannot take this inhuman, disgraceful life of theirs anymore. We wake up and we do whatever we want to do. We can be lazy, we can call off, we can go to work, we can start a new career. Hey, we can burn down cities in Minneapolis and consider that a freedom. So, end of the day, the freedom that me and you cherish needs to be taught to every single breathing American to cherish it. Because if we don't, God forbid, if we lose it, taking it back will be an impossible task for our generation. And remember, the revolution and invasion of my motherland took place in 1979. I was born in 1983. I paid the price. Don't even think for a second, if we don't do what it takes to keep our country freedom, and if we don't do what it takes to keep our constitution in place, me and you, we're going to pay the bare minimum price. The next generation is going to pay the price. So every night you go to bed thinking there is more important thing to do than fight for your nation and your country and your constitution and your freedom, remember, one day you're going to have to answer to your daughters, to your sons, to your nieces and nephews of why didn't you do something about it? I asked that question of my grandmother hundreds of times. Why didn't you stop it? Why don't you stop it? You know what she always said? I thought they're going to get tired and go home.
Mm, yeah,
But
they
they
never get
didn't.
tired. Unfortunately, they never get tired. So, dear sister, I'm sure you still maintain contacts with people in Iran, or at least you're aware of what's going on in Iran, maybe even in Turkey. What is the mood over there these days? You hear news, you hear news of conversions, you hear news of Christianity growing, underground church, you name it. People are tired of religion and so on and so forth. But is this really true? Is it representative of what's going on over there? Are people truly seeking ways to have freedom?
Oh, absolutely. About easily 80% of population in Iran, old or young, they are completely done with Islam. They are. Behind closed doors, there is no more Islam in homes. That's 80%. There is a huge number of underground churches. That is very accurate. Unfortunately, uh, they keep getting raided. They keep getting exposed. Sadly, they keep getting arrested, but they are not giving up. From what I hear, for every one underground church that's shut down, they're open three more. The biggest number of conversion right now is Christianity. At the same time, as I said, there are many Iranians who are either going back to Zoroastrianism. Uh, there are those who basically just are done with all religion. There's a pretty fairly good number of atheists in Iran, but I can tell you that the number of Muslims who are actual Muslims, it's about this much. And that's what's making the government, the regime of Iran, very nervous. The reason they are very out there yelling and screaming and trying to attack as many enemy as they can is because internally they're losing control.
Right, right. I mean, to be honest with you, and again, I know we're not talking politics here, but I'm always baffled by they got their hand in a lot of jars in Iraq, in Syria, Lebanon, Hezbollah, threats against Saudi, in Yemen, and yet they have also their internal problems. How are they able to maintain control? I mean, you would think by now they'll fall apart, actually, but it seemed like somehow they're still holding on. I mean, what's the secret to their success in doing so?
I told you they're Shia, they're diplomats. They know how. First thing is, let's talk about this. It was 2007 when the supreme leader of Islamic Republic of Iran came out on a Friday morning prayer and made a warning, said to America, if you ever try to get close to us, I have 72 million hostages in here and I will not hesitate to kill them. He was referring to Iranian citizens inside Iran.
That's
That
right.
is the leader of the country. He has controlled the people inside through fear and death. You remember 2009, the Green Movement. Thousands of Iranians killed for simply asking, where is my vote?
Right.
You remember 3 years ago, the White Wednesday and women removing their hijabs and saying no to mandatory hijab. They were shipped to prisons in buses. This man is by far the most ruthless leader my motherland has ever faced. So that's how he is maintaining control inside the Iran. And remember, my country does not have Second Amendment. That's how they managed to kill thousands overnight when they tried to do even a peaceful rally.
They
Because
don't have
also,
they don't have Second Amendment.
exactly, they also don't have the First Amendment when you have the right to petition your government peacefully. So
Okay.
when they try to do a peaceful rally, they start killing them. And they don't have weapons to defend themselves. So they end up going home and trying to find a different way. As far as outside of Iran goes, Iran has always invested their money, technology, and energy through terrorist groups. That's how they maintain their power within Middle East. IRGC, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of these groups work for Iran's regime. And that's where the embarrassing moment of my life comes, that why are we even considering sitting down and renegotiating with these people so we can give them more money so they can gain more control
Exactly.
of the Middle East.
Yep, I'm glad you brought this up because I was debating whether I should bring it up or not. Now that you open the door for it, again, we want to be careful and gentle. Of course, I'm not asking you to say anything that you feel uncomfortable about. But is it true? Again, I want you to at least correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it true that whatever the Iranian at least government is doing, driven by the religion itself, that every action they take is theologically founded, at least in their mind, because of the 12th Imam, because of what they, hope for to happen, the war against the enemies of Islam, decimating Israel, and so on and so forth. Is that true?
Yes, 100%. If you read the Constitution of Islamic Republic of Iran, I actually, if you don't mind me plugging this, if your audience wants to see this very exact thing I'm about to mention, they can either go to our website, it's right on the website, or they can send a text message with my name, ANNI, send it to 88202. I'll send you the PDF file. Here's what it says. Within the Constitution of Iran, this constitution has been set up by laws of Islam to set the ground for the global Islamization and caliph. That's what their constitution says.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up because I wanted people to see that this idea of negotiating and renegotiating nuclear power, for God's sake, don't you understand that you're feeding actually this desire to have this supremacy?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really so sure. I mean, dear sister, do you deal with government officials? I mean, these are smart people. I mean, how can they even tolerate things like this?
Well, they are smart people. But I always have this saying that where are we at, where are we going, and why are we going there? Why are we going there? Unfortunately, majority over 75% of either side of politicians who have hands and they're involved with our government cannot wait to burn America down and build their deluded utopia on the ashes left behind. There is no better tool to burn America down as we know it than allowing Islam to come in. Because that's what Islam does. Islam takes you back 1400 years. Anything Islam touches turns into dust. They are smart, and that's why they're working with Islamists.
Right. Yeah. Well said. Well, in closing, what would you say to those Western women who are fascinated about Islam, who want to convert to Islam, or who wants to at least accommodate Islam one way or another?
Here's what I'll tell them. Number one, I will say, as a human, male or female, doesn't matter. As a human, if you have any self-respect, you stay away from Islam. Because the very first thing Islam will take away from you is your identity and your humanity. Number two, if you're desperate to attach yourself to Islam, I am asking you to open the Quran, read chapter 4. The name of it is The Woman. Allah took the time to write a full chapter about how to mistreat your daughter and your wife. You need to be aware of that before you ever imagine having any interest or attraction toward Islam. Because as much as you think there is Me Too movement and equal rights and Women's March, you have no idea the lack of respect and lack of rights that Islam will offer you as a woman. At least if you're going to destroy yourself, do it while educated. Read chapter 4 of the Quran.
Yes, chapter 4, 65, the whole Quran, for God's sake. You can read the whole thing.
I can understand how agonizing it would be for a normal person to read that book. So I'm like, just read chapter 4. That at least gives you the clear idea of the foundation of what it means to be a woman under Islam.
Yeah. Amen. Well, thank you so much for taking again the time to do so. I know the amazing moderators were posting your Twitter handle and other things, but is there any specific website you always like people to at least go to know about your work, or do you have a YouTube channel you would like for them to know about as well?
AmericanTruthProject.org is where the majority of work with you happens. My personal page on Facebook is just my name, Aynaz Cyrus. But if you want to really get educated on what's happening, AmericanTruthProject.org is a very good place to go to.
Wonderful. May I ask also, and really I say it with just with really the clearest intent here to help you in your effort. Is there a way for people to help you financially? How can they do so?
Absolutely. This is going to sound strange. I normally try not to ask for money just out of the blue. So I have a website, liveuptofreedom.com, where I sell merchandise. Actually, the T-shirt I'm wearing is my own merchandise. If you want to buy my merchandise, you can go to liveuptofreedom.com. If you're interested in art and craft, I actually build and do art and craft, painting and other stuff. You can purchase those, which will support me financially, and you can find them on Facebook, LUTF Studio. Those are where you can support me by purchasing my merchandise. But if you absolutely want to make a donation directly, then you can definitely do that through my Facebook page.
Thank you so much again. And I would love really to have you back again soon. Maybe we can craft out a topic related to women and Sharia law and begin to address it from your own practical experience and your work as well. So hopefully you can take me up on my offer.
I will most definitely do that. I promise I'll be back.
Thank you so much. We were truly honored by your presence. Thank you to everyone who joined us. Please remember Sister Aynaz in your prayers, and also go and check the work that she's doing and find ways to stand by her mission, because I can tell you, as a former Muslim myself, the mission is tough now. And I don't mean anything by this, Sister Aynaz, but as a former Muslim who's a female, it gets even tougher. So we need to always remember that. I'm always impressed and blessed by former Muslim women. They are warriors, and they are truly the ones that will bring that ideology down, Lord willing, soon here. So thank you again for your presence. Thank you for your work. Thank you for everything that you are doing. And thank you for sharing with us this hour. I know it's going to be a precious hour. A lot of people here are enjoying it, judging by the comments they're making. And please, everyone, share this in your own also network and platforms and sphere as well, because we want more and more people to be familiar with warriors like Sister Aynaz and the work that she does. Thank you again. God bless you, everybody. This is Al Fadi, over and out.